Black Enterprise presents the 40 Under 40 honorees in media and politics, featuring content creators, esteemed journalists, corporate media leaders, elected officials, lobbyists, and government operatives. Danielle Young, content creator and journalist. Ebony K. Williams, attorney, TV host, executive producer, and actress. Imani Ellis, founder of CultureCon and Creative Collective NYC. Morgan DeBon, founder and CEO of Blavity Inc. Trevor Noah, comedian and host of The Daily Show. Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour and moderator of Washington Week. Lauren Underwood, representative, 14th Congressional District in Illinois. Richie Torres, representative, 15th Congressional District in New York. And Simone D. Sanders, senior advisor and chief spokesperson for Vice President Kamala Harris. For more information on all of our honorees, log on to blackenterprise.com/40under40. Welcome to Building a Sustainable Future Through Innovation, brought to you by BlackRock. I'm Alisa Gumbs, the Executive Managing Editor of Black Enterprise. Sustainable innovation might sound like a high-minded business term, but the concept isn't complicated. It's using technology to create new business products and processes that make the world better while also respecting its natural resources. Or, to put it simply, it's about changing how we do business, so that we're not just benefiting the bottom line, but also benefiting the planet as well. Today, we have three speakers who are each engaged in innovation and sustainability in different ways. And they're here to share their journeys and tell you why you should also care about sustainable innovation. Please welcome Dorothy Jean Tillman, the founder and CEO of the Dorothy Jeanius STEAM Leadership Institute. Jasmin Crowe, the founder and CEO of Goodr, and Melanie Habwe Dickson, the Vice President of America's iShares business strategy at BlackRock. Welcome, ladies, and thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for
having us.
So, DJ, I want to start with you. You have such an amazing story. You enrolled in college at the age of 10. And now at 15, you're the youngest environmental and sustainable scientist in the country. Yes. How did you first get interested in sustainability?
I got interested in sustainability through social media, honestly, seeing things about sea life and sea animals. And me and my best friend had always loved like whales and dolphins, like little girls do. And like sea turtles, my sister always wanted a turtle. And we saw things about like the straws and the pollution. And it started small with me like buying a metal straw or a reusable Starbucks cup. But then when it came to me getting my master's, my mom was like, well, this is an ever-changing, career, and it's an ever-changing subject and topic, and I kind of need things that are constantly moving. And you're also really interested in a lot of these things that I see you interested in right now. I suggest that you get your degree in environmental science. And so I went on to get my degree in environmental science from Unity College, and it's America's environmental college. Their whole campus is sustainable and beautiful. And I just was so like indulged from that point on. And I just wanted to learn more and more about it. Every assignment I did, we had a pretty big assignment one time about the coral reefs, and that got me even more hooked. And so it was just, it started little.
What exactly does an environmental and sustainable scientist do?
For me, if I were to call myself an environmental and sustainable scientist, I feel like they kind of all are, they work in tandem. Like when they come together, they work well as in groups. But I feel like I, as an environmental scientist personally, like to spearhead my own like entrepreneurial, environmentally sustainable business and so on and so forth. I kind of believe in working from like the hearts and the communities. And so personally for me, I work and I do programming and things like that to share those things as an environmental scientist who has studied these things. But environmental scientists mostly would be like studying what will be going on in different neighborhoods and things like that, and how it might predict to be working with different scientists from different fields, predicting how it will be for future years to come and come.
A big part of what you do is inspiring other young people to save the planet. Tell us about the Dorothy Jeanius STEAM Leadership Institute and how it's impacting both your fellow generation and the environment.
Yeah, so the Dorothy Jeanius STEAM Leadership Institute, which STEAM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math. Right now, we have online courses and modules, camps in person and online to help teens and such. Right now, our in-person camp is only in Chicago, and sometimes we go and do environmental cleanups and pop-up camps with our different partners that work in Arizona and Atlanta. But we have our summer camp every year in Chicago, where for 6 weeks straight, COVID-free last year, we work with teens from Chicago on a different letter of STEAM every 5 days of the week from 8 to 3. Just like it will be for school, but it's fun. They want to come and they love it. And I have my website, and we have STEAM kits to ship to kids all around the world in countries that we were working with before COVID hit. So everything we do at camp, we just put it in a box and we ship it off to them in Cape Town, South Africa, and Paris, France, and a couple different places. And so we're branching out and doing that right now. We have different courses and modules on behavioral and mental health, which work in heavy tandem with what's going on with the environment. Because if you're not able to like center yourself and understand what's going on with how you feel and what's going on around you and process the information, you aren't even in a position to kind of work on changing what's going on around you. And so that's right now what we're focusing on with my STEAM Leadership Institute. We also have a book that's coming out soon for teens, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul, to read and kind of understand and get a grasp on what they might want for their career and what other people have gone to like through on the path that they might want to go through.
Jasmin, your story is also quite inspirational. You're a social entrepreneur, meaning you use business to solve socioeconomic and environmental issues. Tell us about the problems that you saw and the work that you were doing that led to your founding Goodr.
Definitely. So it's so good to see you again, Alisa. I was feeding people that were experiencing homelessness and hunger on the streets of downtown Atlanta. I started doing that in 2013. So I like to say that I've really been vested in the social impact space for over a decade. But as I was feeding people, a video of my work actually went viral on Facebook. And I woke up one morning to millions of views and friend requests and comments. And I was reading through those comments. One of the reoccurring questions that people kept asking me was, who donates the food? And the reality was nobody. I was couponing, price matching, cooking all this food myself. And I started thinking it would be really great if I could get this food donated. And so a simple Google search, what happens to excess food at the end of the night, really led me to food waste. And while I didn't, think of myself as an environmentalist before, once I saw how much food was going to waste, I really became upset, because having been on the streets and feeding people who really didn't know where their next meal was coming from at that time for 4.5 years, I was really just blown away that we were wasting 72 billion pounds of perfectly good food in the United States alone. And that is from the consumer. This is not what we're wasting in our household. This is from consumer facing businesses like restaurants, hotels, stadiums, and arenas. And so really inspired at the emergence of the food delivery app, I decided to create a tech company that would connect this excess food with people in need, back it in technology so that the food could be picked up in real time and delivered to a network of nonprofits. So what Goodr does now is we essentially are a food waste management company. We are helping businesses get to zero waste. Food waste is one of the leading contributors to global climate change. As that food sits in landfill and rots, it produces methane gas. It's a terrible carbon emitter. And we're really helping businesses stand on the principle that you can do well by doing good, that this food has a lot of value, and that we cannot see it go to waste while people are going hungry.
So some of the issues that you mentioned, homelessness, hunger, food waste, sadly, they're common problems in cities all over the world, but your solution is really unique in the way that you leverage technology. So how did you come to use technology and innovation to create a model that was both a win for your business and a win for the environment?
Yeah, again, I think I was really inspired at the emergence of the food delivery apps that we were starting to see around 2016. And what I saw is that we were creating a lot of technology that was going to make it easier for people like you and I to order food and have food delivered to us. But we were creating nothing in the realm of technology that was going to help people who didn't know where their next meal was coming from. And that's really where I felt like I could come in. I often say people thought I was crazy because I had no tech experience. I certainly wasn't an engineer. I was really more vested in the problem of hunger. What I also saw is that technology allowed me to capture a lot of data around the items that these businesses were donating. And so at scale, we're able to tell businesses, hey, these are the items that you waste the most. They can maybe make better production decisions. So maybe they're selling something or producing something that's no longer popular at their corporation. And we've seen that. I mean, we've really been able to help customers make better production decisions. We're also able to help follow the chain of custody of that food at the time of donation. We know who has it, who picked it up, where it went to, and technology allowed us to do all that. So I really think I was just inspired by the fact that technology was being used to help people who had and not the have-nots. And that's really what I wanted to do.
Melanie, I'm so glad you're a part of this discussion because you're able to shed light on a whole different side of sustainability and what role corporate America can play. Can you share with us some of BlackRock's environmental initiatives, and especially those that might be close to your heart?
Sure. Well, I've been at BlackRock for 3 years, and I was really drawn in because BlackRock's motto is creating better financial futures for everyone. I wasn't that familiar with the asset management industry, but I was reading that BlackRock was the biggest asset manager. Once I got to the firm, I realized that approximately 2/3 of the trillions of dollars of assets under management that BlackRock manages are people's pensions, people's retirement money. And so we service approximately 35 million Americans and approximately 200 million people globally who have a pension, who have a 401k. If you have any of those things, then probably you have some holdings directly or indirectly with BlackRock. And so we really are passionate about being good stewards of the retirement money that people, their employers have really entrusted us with. And part of that is making sure that while we are investing and building upon people's retirement income, we're also being good stewards to their futures, their children's futures. And that means being a really good steward of the environment. And so BlackRock is doing a whole host of things to make sure that we are creating a path to net zero, a path to a future where we broadly speaking across the globe are not putting more pollutants into the air, and are actually trying to reduce the number of pollutants in the air. We have not forgotten that sustainability includes the E, the S, and the G, the environment, the societal impact, and the governance. So BlackRock is really wielding its governance to have an impact on how other companies think about the environment as well. So I'll talk a little bit about what BlackRock does, but one of the things that's closest to my heart is that BlackRock is a real advocate. BlackRock sits on the board of many other big companies across the country and the world, and we have been really using and leveraging this position to make sure that other companies are also reducing their carbon emissions and are disclosing their carbon emissions. And we have basically right now is, a zero tolerance policy for other companies that we sit on the boards of that want to hide their environmental impact. We are really pushing all the companies that we work with to be very transparent about the impact they're having, so that our impact goes way far beyond what we do internally. What we do internally really started with our founder, Larry Fink. He ever since the financial crisis, he's been writing a letter at the beginning of every year in January to other CEOs broadly. It's just kind of an open letter. It's in the news. Last year, what was really on his mind and his heart was climate change. And so beginning in 2020, before we knew that we would be in a global pandemic, he was really impressing upon other business leaders to think about the climate. And he actually reiterated that in 2021. And not only did he reiterate that, but he also started to expand that to looking at other pandemics that we recognize, including the racial injustice pandemic. And so, that's part of the societal impact, the S in the ESG. And so BlackRock is also creating really cool ways for young and millennial and values-based investors to steward their money in a way that's aligned with their values. So my particular job is within the indexed investment space, which basically just means that rather than having your money kind of invested all over the stock market, we're creating kind of custom baskets of stocks, bonds, and other investments that go along with certain values. So we have over 50 sort of ESG, sustainable indexed investment or ETFs that people can choose from. And we are really responding to our clients' needs because our clients are demanding that they have investment options that don't involve guns, that don't involve coal. And we want to deliver that for our clients so that we are building not just a better financial future, but a safer, healthier, and better future for everyone.
So I want to go back to two things that you just said. The first is net zero. And I know that one of BlackRock's aims is to get to a net zero economy, but a lot of people don't know what that means. So can you just explain net zero?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, net zero essentially means that we are not putting out more pollutants, more carbon into the atmosphere than we are taking out. So there are some ways that bigger companies can kind of offset their emissions. So a company like Microsoft is a really cool example. Microsoft not only said, we want to reduce the emissions that all of our kind of production, all of our indirect supply chain is creating, but they also said, let's look back to the 1970s when we were actually created. And let's look at all of the emissions and pollutants that the creation of all Microsoft products has had over time. And let's offset that by adding to the environment in ways that include building forests to help clean the air. So actually pulling out some of the pollutants from that sit in the air right now. And they recognize that the impact of the past 4 or 5 decades of their business has left pollutants that are still in the air. So they're pulling those out of the air while they're also reducing the emissions. So Microsoft is a great example of a company that is really on the path towards net zero, towards equalizing the environmental impact they've had over time. And BlackRock has been working really closely with Bill Gates in terms of just shaping the thought leadership around getting to net zero.
The other thing that you said that I want to go back to is about sustainable investing. You touched on it some, but there are a lot of people out in the Black enterprise audience who are interested in wealth building, but may not be familiar with that type of investing. So can you explain what sustainable investing is?
Sure. So this is also really close to my heart. I think that a lot of times in the past, people have thought of sustainable investing as essentially not revenue generating, not wealth building. But what we actually saw in the 2020 pandemic, when all of the markets contracted, was that sustainable investments, sustainable portfolios were actually performing better than non-sustainable portfolios. So there's a few different ways BlackRock is being a pioneer in the sustainable investment space. One, we are we're working on creating metrics around the environmental impact of an investment, the societal impact, and the governance of an investment. And the governance piece I'm really passionate about as well, because that includes diversity on the boards, diversity within the company, the way employees are treated, how many, is there racial discrimination at the company, the number of Black and female employees at the company. And so by creating all these metrics, we can actually assign an ESG value to each investment. When you're investing in a company, we can say that this will increase your score or decrease your score and make your investment more or less sustainable. And then when we think about the environment in particular, as I mentioned, we are working with companies to make sure that they reduce their environmental impact, and we can assign a rating to the degree to which a company is reducing their environmental impact. And so then to buy stocks and bonds, or to buy a package of stocks, for example, that's bundled into an exchange traded fund, that ETF can have an environmental score or rating, and that can contribute to an overall portfolio of really sustainable investments. And as I mentioned before, it's not so much that then by doing so, you are becoming an investor who's willing to compromise your returns in exchange for your values. You're actually increasing your returns and aligning your portfolio with your values. So a lot of our clients have been demanding sustainability in their investments. And thankfully last year we were able to prove that making that shift, making that choice is actually better for your pocket in the long run and in the short run.
Now that we have some of the background on how each of you are engaged with sustainable innovation, I want to back up a bit because it's a concept that not everyone is familiar with. DJ and Jasmin, when we talk about sustainable tech, what exactly do we mean?
I think when it comes to like sustainable technologies and things like that, specifically on that end of things, it's like, it has to start from like the root of things. It has to start from, okay, there's a lot of different like facets and aspects of it where it might be, okay, being sustainably created. They use different parts of maybe something that's solar power or that's biofuel to fuel computers and new phones and new batteries for phones and things like that. But then I also think that it's about like the different places that they're using all of these different like electronics and things in the way that they implement them. And so it should be like a greener, happier space. I know a lot of more high-tech places these days are putting a lot of their computer rooms in more like environmental, like just settings, places like that, almost how like Ms. Jasmin like has her like environmental things like behind her. It's just a little bit about the environment and how it might affect like your mental, like what you're doing at the time. But I think it's a lot about the end and the look of things from the different parts and things that different companies, like large companies, could be doing to decrease their like carbon footprint when it comes to building these different electronics.
Jasmin, I know as part of what you do, you have a unique insight into companies and sort of their supply chain and their processes. Is there like a layperson's definition of sustainable tech that you could help people understand how this affects what we do?
Absolutely. I think in the terms of Goodr, when I think about how we have built a technology that helps businesses be more sustainable. So that's where I think of sustainable tech. I think a lot of times we're thinking about products that we're using. You may think of the apps that you have on your phone. Which are those apps, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, you may have an app for food delivery, anything of that nature. So many of the technologies that we're using today do not have sustainability in the forefront. Where Goodr, anytime someone uses that app, What we are helping them do is reduce waste, which is sustainable in its essence, and then keeping that food out of landfill, giving that data back to our customers. So when I think of sustainable tech, I think about creating technologies that help the earth. I think Melanie said it great, not only being for profit, but for people and for planet as well.
So both of you ladies are entrepreneurs. Melanie, in addition to your position at BlackRock, you have both a passion for and a history of advising and investing in small businesses led by people of color. So I'm going to put this question out to all of you. When it comes to sustainable innovation, what should Black business people be thinking about, and how does it impact Black business?
I think I'll jump in here again. I think it impacts Black businesses because a lot of the ways that things are set up sometimes, a lot of the bad environmental, like, things that don't really, in different brands and companies and maybe snacks or stuff that will be pushed into the things in our Black neighborhoods aren't very environmentally friendly. And so I think one way we could work on that, maybe with our family or with our communities or with our businesses in certain aspects, because I know that my programs and companies are usually, since we are on the south side of Chicago, Black kids and Black children, just having those conversations with them about, like, what do you think is going on in your neighborhood? Okay, let's take a walk. Let's see. Maybe here's something that you didn't notice might be a problem, and you just doing your everyday life, carrying on, breathing is just there. It's just the bus, I take it to get from here to here, but how could you change that? And, what could you do to make it more environmentally friendly and literally, like, kind of play a part in the longevity of, like, what's going on in our world. And so it's about kind of like having those conversations with your friends and family and things like that. And a lot of people who might have grown up not believing in things like what's going on in our environment or not wanting to believe it. It's kind of just about, like, getting them to understand and working from the heart of our communities.
I think Dorothy Jean said it so well. She's talking about this shift from globalization to localization. And she and Jasmin Crowe, I see as pioneers who are creating local solutions for global problems that have been really negatively impacting Black and Brown communities all over the world. So I myself have asthma. I know that I've been reading a lot about how, Black people in the US are disproportionately more impacted by pollutants and by negative environmental trends than any other group. And when we look at people of color more broadly, again, the New York Times recently reported that people of color are inhaling and are suffering more from these environmental pollutants than any other group in the United States. That it's not that surprising to those of us who, first of all, have seen this in our communities, like Dorothy Jean's talking about, but who have also just been aware of the impact of how how Black communities suffer, really. And these problems were not created by us. They're created by industry and globalization, but we can solve them. And I think when we're thinking about, what Black business leaders can do, it's really about looking at this as a completely evergreen area where there's just a lot of room for Black people to kind of do what we do best, which is innovate and to see what's in our communities, to tap into the community needs and to be the problem solvers. And by doing that, not only will we be serving our communities, but we'll also be addressing needs that no other communities have really effectively addressed in at least in a long time. And so I see this as a way for us to basically heal our communities in many ways, as well as chart a new path and be the example for the business community more broadly.
I completely agree that both of these women are pioneers. I mean, Jasmin, you're living proof that there is a lot of business opportunity for Black entrepreneurs in the space of sustainability. So as someone who's working in that field, what do you say to other Black people in business about these opportunities?
I mean, there are so many. I think about Reaply and Black Power. These are, other organizations. There's Journey Foods, there's Planet Forward. These are all sustainable companies that are helmed by Black men and women. And so, especially those younger people here, this is a world of opportunity. When you look at the United Nations saying that by 2030, so less than 10 years from now, we want to cut food waste in half, or we want to eliminate global climate change. There's a lot of necessity and need for people like us to get in here and solve these problems. I love that Melanie said this as well as DJ, is we are solving problems that are affecting us. And that's what's really great about it. When you think of things like the Flint water crisis, when you think of the pollutants that Melanie is speaking of, that people of color are more likely to inhale because we are living by plants and living in these communities where, lo and behold, it's approved that they can go and put this factory here that's going to put all these pollutants in the air around our communities. We have to be the ones to solve these problems because we have to think of our people and how they're being affected. For me, hunger affects people of color at a far greater rate, 1 in 3 children as opposed to 1 in 6. So that was really deeply personal to me. And one of the reasons why I'm very committed to the work that we do in making sure that we end hunger. And I believe we can do it by reducing food waste, because it's not an issue of scarcity. The food is being produced, it's just being thrown away, or we can work to get that food redirected. So I think that there's a really great opportunity. I'm encouraging others to look into sustainability, understand what this means, because it's everything from our water to our food to the resources. And there's a huge need for more people in this space.
I love that you guys have brought up the ways in which these are really tangible issues that disproportionately affect the Black community, whether we're talking about food justice or environmental justice. And so I want you all to, as we wrap up this discussion, leave the audience with some next steps, because sustainability is something that requires all of us to get engaged. So what can everyone out there do as individuals to help us build a more sustainable future? DJ, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, I was going to jump in there. I say, if you have young teens and children, or maybe you might be a head on a school board or a principal or a teacher, log on to dorothyjeans.com, see the vast amount of resources we have for teens wanting to focus on like STEAM and environmental justice and environmental sustainability. We have lots of programs and we have lots of space for them. And we have space to spread out. And we do have our online programming and modules, but we also have in-person for people who work a little better like that. And if you don't want to log on, I honestly say just take a step back, go on a stroll with your mom, your grandmother, your dad, your dog, and take a look at certain things in your community that maybe you could start by emailing your alderwoman or your councilwoman or man and saying, hey, like, could you, work on maybe checking this street out, or what might be better for this, or, just reaching out to people and legislative people that could help you on that path of sustainability. And it kind of seems like one of those far away dreams, but you really don't know until you try. And so that's what I say.
Jasmin.
Of course, I got to talk about what we all can be doing as it relates to food waste. So, we throw a lot of food away in the household. So one of the things that I've done is I'm a meal shopper. So I used to go and buy groceries and try and go grocery shopping for the week. And I was always throwing food away. As soon as I really got into this business, now I shop per meal. So if I'm going to cook lasagna tonight, I'm only going and buying the items for lasagna. I invested in a food saver. So I freeze a lot of food and then eat it for another meal, maybe in a week or two. Because you may not want to eat lasagna for 5 days. What you certainly don't want to do is throw that lasagna away. So think about the resources, purchase things for meals. Do not just buy excess food that's going to go to waste. Eat your leftovers that you take home from a restaurant. Look into composting, recycling, and also using your garbage disposal. That's one of the number one things that people can do. That's a simple thing that we forget about when you do have excess food. Instead of throwing it away for it to end up in landfill, consider using your garbage disposal to dispose of it so that you're not putting it in the trash and in landfill. So eat your food and make sure you don't waste anything, because when you're wasting something, you're wasting a precious resource that 1 in 8 people on this planet don't have access to.
And Melanie, last words.
I think what both of my great co-panelists have highlighted is that none of us can fix everything, but we can all do many different things. So we should all, be thinking about how we can reduce food waste. We should all be looking around us into our natural environment. I've been really inspired by seeing how BlackRock is tackling climate change, because BlackRock is doing many different things and trying many different angles and just trying to attack the problem from all sides. So I think about, how BlackRock is really advocating for other companies to also be better. I think that we can also, as individuals, advocate for our families and our friends to reduce their carbon footprint, to maybe walk instead of drive to the local store, to reduce their food waste, to compost, everything that Jasmin was saying. And then I think also for business leaders specifically, in the area of sustainable business, we need more pioneers. And what that means is that people won't really necessarily have models to look to replicate, their business on. But I think that our community is fantastic at creating their own solutions. And so I think it's really important for business leaders in this area who want to be pioneers to set their own benchmarks, not run after other people's benchmarks, but set their own goals and find ways that they can be innovative leaders in this space. And by doing so, we're not letting other people set the benchmarks for us, and we'll become true environmental pioneers.
Yes, as Melanie said, we're built for this. We are resourceful people and we can find solutions. Thank you, DJ, Jasmin, and Melanie, for all the insights you've shared today. A big thanks to BlackRock for bringing us this important conversation. And thank you all out there for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.